NASA's mission is to explore the unknown.
There's more that we don't know than we do know. That's just the nature of the universe.
In the search for answers, it launches its scientists into space, its craft beyond the limits of the solar system.
Taking risks is part of making discoveries. Space exploration is like lighting a match, and we don't know what lurks in the shadows.
Hey, what is that?
There could be anything out there.
A mystery killer claims the lives of 3 cosmonauts.
They're all just lying there. There's not a mark on them, not a sign of any struggle.
A declassified CIA document reveals a sinister plan for America's first manned space mission.
The plan is, if Friendship 7 fails, the CIA is going to provide evidence that electronic interference from Cuba caused it.
And a series of strange events around the ISS sparks fears of a cyber attack.
The hack could be a deadly disaster up there.
NASA's missions have uncovered disturbing anomalies.
Okay, we're seeing 3 or 4 objects.
That continue to perplex our finest scientific minds. These are NASA's Unexplained Files. Soviet cosmonauts set a new record for the longest manned mission in space.
They were going to come home to a hero's welcome.
The module lands right on schedule, but the retrieval team makes a shocking discovery.
All 3 cosmonauts are motionless and unresponsive.
June 1971. 3 Russian cosmonauts, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev, are about to complete a record-breaking mission on Russia's Salyut space station.
It's a great propaganda success for the Soviet Union. Record-setting duration in space, 23 days.
At 9:28 p.m., the Soyuz 11 capsule undocks from the space station to begin its 4-hour journey home.
It's a textbook mission. Everything is running like clockwork.
The entire re-entry and landing procedure is out of the cosmonauts' hands.
The Russians do everything remotely. They control the spacecraft from the ground. They felt like they could do a better job from the ground than the pilots could on board.
Technicians at Mission Control monitor every aspect of the spacecraft, including the cosmonauts themselves.
There's a confidential numbering system in place to report the individual health status of each crew member back to Mission Control.
5 means the cosmonauts are in excellent condition. 4 means they're in good condition. 3 means that the cosmonauts have sustained injuries. 2 means that the injuries are serious. And 1 is the number that nobody wants to hear.
Mission Control has been in constant communication with the capsule, and the health condition reports on each of the cosmonauts has been at 5.
79 minutes before re-entering Earth's atmosphere, the cosmonauts make their final radio contact with Mission Control and sign off. During re-entry, an envelope of ionized air around the capsule blocks all radio transmissions. Waiting TV cameras capture the moment the capsule appears in the skies above Kazakhstan.
Spectacular shot for the media. The parachutes open successfully, and it descends to Earth.
25 minutes after beginning the re-entry burn, Soyuz 11 lands at its designated site.
It sets down in Kazakhstan, right on time.
The recovery team reaches the capsule and pops the hatch.
They're completely unprepared for what they find.
Back at Mission Control, they get the 3 numbers that they do not want to hear. 111.
All 3 crew members are dead.
That moment in Mission Control when you know someone has died, it has to feel like a stone in your gut.
The cause of the cosmonauts' death is a mystery.
In the intervening moments between signing off on the radio and the recovering team's arrival, something has killed 3 people.
They're all just lying there. There's not a mark on them, not a sign of any struggle.
News of the disaster soon reaches NASA.
NASA keeps a very close eye on the Soviet space program. It's not just about rivalry, but if something happens, we need to know about it.
The agency is just 2 years away from embarking on its own long-term mission with the launch of the space station, Skylab.
Skylab mission is just around the corner for NASA, and it's going into a lot of unknown territory.
At this time, NASA doctors know little about the long-term effects of space travel on the human body. They need to know the cosmonauts' cause of death, or NASA's own astronauts could share the same fate.
We wanted and we needed to find out what the cosmonauts had gone through.
NASA fears that heart failure could be responsible for the loss of the cosmonauts.
One of the early medical concerns about space travel was that your heart could become so deconditioned after you adapted to zero gravity, because the heart doesn't have to work as hard, that once you came back down and were subjected to higher levels of G, that your heart actually couldn't handle it. And there was no question of how long could humans survive in space. The previous record was 13 days, and this mission was 23. Maybe this was the limit.
Autopsies reveal that the cosmonauts did not die from heart failure. The Soviet State Commission launches an inquiry. Investigators carry out a detailed examination of the landing capsule. The discovery of a ruptured ventilation valve allows them to piece together the cosmonauts' final moments.
They get ready to undock, and as they undock, the hatch that closes the pressure off from the spacecraft to the space station comes loose.
The cosmonauts experienced a rapid decompression, and they very quickly lost the pressure inside of their capsule.
They didn't wear the spacesuits. They just had on coveralls.
They quickly lost consciousness, and the cosmonauts actually suffocated.
After the loss of the Soyuz 11 cosmonauts, the Soviet Space Agency made it mandatory for all crew members to wear spacesuits during re-entry.
We all know the danger. We're all ready to go into space, but we recognize that it's a dangerous occupation. I think there's no question that they would gladly give their lives in the pursuit of space for their country.
Still to come, a secret CIA plan to use a space disaster as cover to start World War III.
It's kind of crazy to think that one space flight going wrong could have altered the planet's history.
At the height of the Cold War, NASA races to get the first American into orbit.
Godspeed, John Glenn. 10, 9.
The Soviet Union and the United States both needed the space race as a way of proving their societies were superior, that their economies were superior, that their research was better.
Recently declassified documents reveal a CIA plot to use the space mission as cover to start World War III.
These manufactured acts of terrorism would be the perfect excuse for the United States to invade Cuba.
NASA is a civilian space agency, but it has always had a close relationship with the U.S. military and intelligence services. Sometimes, perhaps too close. February 20th, 1962. An Atlas LV-3D rocket rises from Cape Canaveral's Launch Site 14. It carries America's first astronaut.
John Glenn's mission, Friendship 7, was designed to be the first orbital flight of a U.S. astronaut.
Kilo 102, 101, oxygen 78, 100 amps, 27.
The whole object of the mission was to successfully go into orbit and return back to Earth.
The pressure on NASA for John Glenn's mission to succeed is intense. 9 months earlier, Yuri Gagarin had become the first man to orbit the planet.
Americans believed that even though we were behind, this was showing that things were going to get better in the future.
Glenn's mission has the pride of the whole nation riding on it.
Oh, that view is tremendous.
The mission comes at a moment when tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union are at an all-time high.
The whole world is on a knife's edge. The Pigs invasion was just a few months ago. A lot of people are looking for an excuse to take another shot at Cuba.
While the hopes of America hang on John Glenn's mission, some within the U.S. government are preparing for it to fail.
A recently declassified CIA document revealed there could have been a whole lot more riding on John Glenn's mission. If it failed, it could have triggered World War III.
The document is part of a scheme called Operation Mongoose. In response to a request by U.S. Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the CIA produces several proposals to dispose of Castro's regime in Cuba. One, Operation Dirty Trick, involves John Glenn's mission.
It is possible that if John Glenn's mission failed in some way, that it could be blamed on Cuba, and as a result, help the United States in discrediting Castro and possibly result in his removal from power from Cuba.
The plan remains classified until 1997. The document clearly states that the CIA would manufacture evidence to implicate Cuba.
These manufactured acts of terrorism would be the perfect excuse for the United States to invade Cuba.
NSA analysts conduct an assessment of the potential consequences.
NSA experts are warning that if the U.S. moves on Cuba, the Soviets are ready to retaliate with nuclear weapons. This could be it.
U.S. officials estimate that a nuclear war with Russia could lead to the deaths of 150 million people.
You've got to wonder whether Glenn knows any of this as he flies out of Earth's atmosphere.
Glenn's Mercury spacecraft successfully enters Earth's orbit, traveling at a speed of over 17,000 miles per hour. But something goes wrong.
As the flight goes on, John Glenn gets a signal from ground control that the clamps on the heat shields are loose. If the heat shield goes off, he'll burn up on re-entry.
The damn thing was floating on the bottom of the spacecraft. If it comes off, you're dead.
The mission is on the brink of failure, and of course neither the Soviets nor the Cubans have done anything to it.
NASA staff at Mission Control brainstormed solutions to the heat shield problem.
So the concern was, when John fired his retro rocks to slow down, if this was in fact loose, that when he jettisoned the retro rockets, that all of a sudden this heat shield would deploy. That would be a fatal situation.
We have decided to re-enter with the tank on.
Mission Control orders Glenn not to eject his retro rockets as previously planned.
Roger. Understand.
The heat shield holds. Glenn safely splashes down in the Mercury module, 800 miles off the coast of Bermuda.
John Glenn becomes the first American to orbit the Earth, successfully completing his mission.
We should all be very glad that NASA pulled this one off.
John Glenn becomes an American hero. The CIA never has the chance to execute Operation Dirty Trick.
You have to remember this was only a plan. There's no certainty that anything like this would have ever been actually executed.
Was Operation Dirty Trick just hypothetical? Most probably. You have to hope nobody was going to follow through with it.
Still to come, NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter disappears on final approach to the red planet.
This is the second NASA probe to die just as it approaches Mars. There's something strange going on here.
A NASA probe disappears as it approaches the red planet.
The last thing we expected was to lose the spacecraft.
Could a Russian photograph of an unidentified object in Mars orbit reveal the cause?
There's something there, and it's huge.
The red planet has always fascinated mankind, but it is a dangerous obsession. To date, over half the missions to Mars have failed.
T-minus 20 seconds.
December 11th, 1998.
We have ignition and we have liftoff. We continue to explore the mysteries of the red planet.
A Delta II rocket carries NASA's $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter on the first leg of its journey to the red planet.
So there's a lot of anticipation that this mission is going to succeed, get an orbit around Mars, and help us understand the global properties of that planet.
We've been waiting for months for this. Everything is in the go.
And liftoff.
6 years ago, we lost Mars Observer. Now we're taking those instruments, reflying them. Climate Orbiter is a way to get that data now. So we've got a lot riding on it. We really don't want to have another failure.
The probe travels over 100 million miles to reach its target.
Climate Orbiter is doing exactly what we tell it. It's following instructions beautifully.
On September 23rd, 9 months after its launch, the probe begins to decelerate as it enters Mars's orbit and disappears behind the red planet.
We expect it to be out of communication as it breaks around the far side of the planet. It's a period of nervousness, though. We will all breathe a sigh of relief when we finally hear from it.
The team expects the orbiter to be out of contact with Mission Control for just 1 hour.
The entire Mars community is holding its breath.
But after 90 minutes, there is still no sign of the probe.
You wait and you wait. The deadline passed. You still didn't hear anything. You're hoping against logic that the signal will come in a few minutes late. But spacecraft don't work that way. The laws of physics are immutable. It's not going to get delayed in traffic.
It does not show up. You could feel the entire Mars community understanding immediately that something very wrong had gone on.
The probe is dead.
It's humbling, I think, is the best way to describe it. It's a humbling experience, and we realize how difficult it is for us to extend the human presence out to these other worlds.
In one instant, what was going to be the beginning of a wonderful mission turns into a tragic loss.
After losing the Mars Observer, the disappearance of the Climate Orbiter is another crushing blow for NASA.
This is the second NASA probe to die just as it approaches Mars. There's something strange going on here.
I'm sorry to report that we have a serious problem with the Mars Climate Orbiter.
Since Earth's been sending probes toward Mars, there's been an extraordinary amount of failures.
No fewer than 15 probes have been lost. They come from NASA, Russia, China, and the UK. They've all failed.
The disturbing frequency of failed missions leads some to speculate that something could be interfering with spacecraft near the red planet.
When we lose probes, particularly orbiters, just before they reach Mars, it can build up a superstition of some kind of space monster around Mars.
An old photograph from a Soviet-era space probe offers investigators a potential clue about what could be happening in Mars's orbit.
In 1989, the Russian Phobos 2 probe is taking pictures of the Martian surface when, bam, something hits it and it spirals out of control.
The Soviet Space Agency loses all contact with the probe, but not before it beams back the image from its final moments.
There's no mistaking it. The image is of a huge cylindrical object about 12 miles long.
These unusual pictures, just before the failure, appear to be a very suggestive coincidence. What was the shape of the object casting the shadow? That was a crucial question.
Does the picture reveal something that scared the Russians into ending their Mars program?
It was the end of their Mars program, not just for that year, but forever. They haven't been back to Mars since then.
NASA does not believe the Mars Climate Orbiter's fate is related to any previous incident. The space agency launches its own investigation to find the cause of their spacecraft's disappearance.
The problem is, all this is going on millions of miles away.
When you lose a spacecraft, you can't go recover it and somehow pick out the black box. Everything lies in the telemetry, in the information that the spacecraft was sending back to you all the way to the last minute.
After 7 weeks of investigation, NASA reveals the cause of the probe's disappearance was human error. The probe's computer guidance system was using U.S. measurements, and the probe was built to work with the metric system.
The difference in units meant that the rocket engines fired for too long, the braking was too hard, and the spacecraft dipped too low into the Martian upper atmosphere, and it disintegrated.
It wasn't the spacecraft's fault, it was our fault.
Somewhere on Mars right now, there are bits and pieces of Mars Climate Orbiter.
Many refuse to accept such a simple explanation.
It's kind of puzzling that we made that mistake, because in space missions, everything is checked, and double-checked, and triple-checked.
And liftoff.
Since the loss of the Mars Climate Orbiter, new regulations state that all new hardware and software must be designed and built using the metric system to avoid repeating the incident.
Even with the brightest minds behind a spacecraft mission, basic mistakes can be made. Unfortunately, this particular mistake turned out to be really costly.
Up next, NASA satellite experts investigate a terrifying red glow in the skies over the Pacific.
People see a lot of strange things from aircraft, but this one also appears on NASA satellites at exactly the same time.
A pilot sees an eerie red glow above a remote part of the Pacific.
The pilot himself was flabbergasted, and he was completely freaked out.
He calls in NASA satellite experts to investigate.
Whatever it is, it's not fake. It's not a hallucination. It's a thing. Something happened.
August 24th, 2014. Commercial pilot JPC Van Heist is flying over the Pacific Ocean south of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula when he sees something he can't explain. A massive red and orange glow emanating from the skies beneath his plane.
At 30,000 feet above the ocean flying from Japan to Alaska, everything's ordinary. All of a sudden you see these red, glowing lights below you. That's going to really be a concern. Could be something that's very dangerous.
According to his charts, there should be nothing but open ocean beneath him.
This pilot has many years of experience flying at night, and this thing that he's seen is freaking him out.
Heist photographs the bizarre anomaly. When he reaches the U.S., he takes his evidence to research scientists at Colorado State University.
I heard about the story from this pilot, JPC Van Heist, and figured that we could shed some light on what was going on.
The Colorado team uses NASA's Suomi weather satellite to investigate the anomaly.
It can see city lights, it can see ship lights, it can see lightning flashes. There's a whole menagerie of lights at night that this sensor is capable of seeing.
The scientists look at Suomi images from the date of the original sighting.
People see a lot of strange things from aircraft, but this one also appears on NASA satellites at exactly the same time.
The first theory they investigate is that the glow could be some kind of volcanic eruption happening on the depths of the ocean floor.
We know that this area is highly active in the Aleutian chain, the Kamchatka Peninsula right there. There's a lot going on. Could a volcano explain the lights?
At the time of the sighting, there are at least 4 major eruptions happening in the Northwest Pacific region. But neither the satellite images nor Van Heist's photographs show other signs of eruptions.
We saw no volcano, we saw no ash plume, we saw no heat signatures, so it couldn't have been a volcano.
Some scientists suggest the strange glow might be a form of lightning, high in the Earth's atmosphere.
My initial reaction on seeing the film was that it might have been a film of red sprite.
This rare phenomenon can create lightning sheets instantaneously, spreading 30 miles across the sky.
Sprites are typically red and are electrical discharges from the top of a towering thunderhead up towards the ionosphere. That electrical current excites the oxygen atoms that are in that region and causing the oxygen atoms to glow red.
But images of the clouds in the area at the time show they are unlikely to be the source of lightning.
All the clouds that were in the area were low-level clouds. They were not electrically charged. They were not lightning-producing storms.
If no known natural phenomenon is to blame, could the lights be caused by something unnatural?
Are we looking at rocket launch testing? It's an interesting idea. There's known areas where they do this kind of testing.
The prime suspect for conducting rocket tests in this area is the Russian military.
It's possible. There are some known launch sites in or near the Kamchatka Peninsula. This was over the ocean, so it could be that they're launched from ships.
The scientists study the satellite imagery from the days before and after the sighting.
We were able to track these lights and found that they moved around from day to day.
The light's movement supports the idea they could come from a mobile source, like a ship.
There are a lot of rocket tests that go on without anybody else knowing about them, and things that are experimented on, airborne blasts and the like, that are not told to the rest of the world, and so it's hard to know exactly what was going on.
But experts are reluctant to accept the missile test theory.
It doesn't quite look to me like missile test. It doesn't have the movement of a missile, and it doesn't have the explosion of a warhead signature that I would look for.
To date, there is still no satisfactory explanation for the glow visible in both the photographs and the NASA satellite images.
The imagery that we see, the clusters of lights, are very consistent with ship lights, but without being able to go down to the surface and get a confirmed sighting of ships or a report of ships operating in that area, we can't be 100% certain.
Coming up, NASA suffers a cyber attack.
As far as hacking into the ISS, never say never. No network is invulnerable.
200 miles above Earth, the ISS veers out of its safe orbit.
There are no planned maneuvers and there is no alarm sounding.
NASA has lost control of the space station.
Can NASA get hacked? Yes, NASA can get hacked.
June 9th, 2015. Astronauts on the International Space Station conduct routine tests of the radio systems.
This is the kind of stuff they have to do all the time on the ISS. New systems are introduced, and I just have to make sure that it works.
As the crew carry out their checks, the ISS begins to move.
a sudden, the rocket thrusters start firing, and nobody knows why.
There are no maneuvers scheduled for the ISS.
The Soyuz engines fired for a full minute before they shut down, and this is actually long enough to change the space station's orbit.
The unexplained rocket firing throws the space station out of its correct orbit.
The path of ISS's orbit is carefully planned to stay out of harm's way. If there's any deviation from that, there's no telling what will happen, but it won't be good.
It takes NASA 2 hours to get the station back on a safe course. The accidental firing is dismissed as a freak incident.
Both NASA and the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos, brush off the event like it was nothing.
The official was that everything was, okay, whoops, everything's fine now.
But other problems with the ISS give rise to speculation that the incident could be a symptom of a bigger problem.
The thrusters firing isn't the only strange thing that's happened to the ISS.
Earlier in the year, a Russian spacecraft en route to resupply the ISS started behaving strangely.
On April 28th, the Progress 59 resupply mission launches. It's essentially a delivery truck bringing food and supplies up to the International Space Station.
The supply module goes into an uncontrolled spin.
The most reliable and used rocket in history. But all of a sudden, everything's gone crazy.
Attempts to regain control fail, and it ultimately burns up as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere.
Roscosmos releases a statement blaming a design peculiarity for the disaster. 3 months before the Progress 59 crash, the crew dealt with another emergency.
Alarm bells literally start ringing on the ISS when a pneumonia leak is detected in the American module.
An alarm was enunciated around 3 a.m. Central Time in the U.S. segment of the complex that sometimes can be indicative of an apparent ammonia leak.
Pneumonia leak is a very scary thing up there because it's not like you have a place to escape to.
It's highly toxic. It's highly dangerous. You don't want to be anywhere near this stuff.
The crew put on gas masks and followed emergency procedures, seeking shelter in the Russian module of the ISS. NASA released a statement saying that the ammonia leak was a false alarm. The cause? Another computer glitch.
Glitches like this could kill someone.
Some suggest that these recurring incidents are evidence that the ISS is under cyber attack. Hackers have already compromised other NASA spacecraft.
In 2007 and 2008, Chinese hackers managed to break into key U.S. satellites.
They took control of the satellites for 11 minutes. The government claims that nothing was done during that 11-minute period, but the fact that they could come in and control the satellites is very scary.
Could the ISS be the latest victim of a space cyber attack?
So as far as hacking into the ISS, never say never. No network is invulnerable.
The International Space Station is essentially a giant pressurized satellite with all the same communications and satellite systems.
I don't think there's any reason to believe the ISS is immune.
If hackers were able to break into the ISS computer systems, they could inflict critical damage.
Everything on the ISS is controlled by computer systems. The water, the air they breathe, maneuvering, the whole lot.
It's all remotely controlled, so to be able to have a hack could be a deadly disaster up there.
Critics of the hacking theory point out that you would need access to a NASA computer to gain control of the ISS.
The space station communicates with NASA and with the rest of the world through very selected portals. So to actually get into the NASA system, you would have to literally steal NASA computers in order to get onto their software, onto their system. Unfortunately, this has happened.
In 2011, an unencrypted laptop containing algorithms used to control the ISS was stolen from a NASA employee.
It's quite possible that this system was hacked and that the rocket boosters were set off because no one can explain how that actually happened.
The stolen laptop was never recovered. NASA has since tightened its cybersecurity. Still to come, California police call on NASA technology to crack a cold murder case.
This is going to allow us to look into areas that we had never had access before.
A California murder investigation hits a dead end.
We don't have a murder weapon, we don't have the body, we don't have this vehicle where she was supposedly shot.
Until a NASA rover uncovers a crucial clue.
The police thought that they had solved the murder case right then and there.
August 1991. The events leading to NASA's first murder investigation begin on a dark road outside of Los Altos, California. Three locals, Bernardo Bass, Don Sanchez, and William Chopsticks Alcorn, are driving down Caribbean Drive off Highway 237.
Car pulls at the side of the road in a vacant lot. Chopsticks gets out of the car. The car then continues on. As Chopsticks looks at the vehicle driving away, he hears a gunshot. And Don Sanchez is never seen again. Bass becomes the main suspect in this investigation.
Bass denies the story put forward by eyewitness Chopsticks.
The problem is that we only have one eyewitness. We don't have a murder weapon. We don't have the body. We don't have his vehicle where she was supposedly shot.
Bass tells investigators that his sister had sold the '79 Pontiac he was driving that night.
That was a key piece of evidence that we were missing.
All attempts to trace the car fail. Just like Don Sanchez, it has disappeared.
We have no body. We have no car. The case goes cold.
15 years pass before investigators uncover new evidence, which reopens the investigation and could lead to the discovery of Don Sanchez's body.
We learned that Bernardo Bass had actually done some concrete work on his property only 10 days after Don Sanchez went missing. We started to believe that Don was possibly buried on the property.
The detectives can't dig up the entire property. They contact the United States Geological Survey for help.
They told us about a new technology that they had gotten, which was developed by NASA, that might be able to help this investigation.
The detectives meet with Robert Cahan at the United States Geological Survey Center in Menlo Park.
They asked me, as a scientist, what imagery methods would be used to detect something in the subsurface. They issued this warrant to search this home, where we would bring our techniques and look below the ground while they were busy looking in the building.
On April 12, 2007, Cahan uses the NASA radar system to search Bass's property. The radar system creates an image of what's underground by sending microwaves into the ground and recording how they bounce back.
The technology was amazing. There was a live screen readout, so we were looking at it. It was like looking underground. It just blew our mind.
Within minutes, the radar reveals something under the concrete.
Immediately adjacent to the house, there was this anomaly that was approximately a foot and a half below the subsurface that looks like it had been excavated, material placed there, and then a concrete slab poured above this location.
The radar readings do not provide enough data to confirm the anomaly is the body of Don Sanchez, but anticipation mounts.
The police thought that they had solved the murder case right then and there. They jackhammered up the concrete right in front of us.
Unfortunately, we didn't find the body.
She might have been there and then moved.
Just as it seems the investigation has stalled again, the DA's office gets an anonymous phone call. The caller claims to know the location of Bass's car.
We received a tip that the car may be chopped up and buried in a lot in Alviso.
It could contain vital forensic evidence.
If we locate the car, we can solve this case.
There's just one problem. The lot is almost an acre wide. Again, the cops call on NASA Technology for assistance.
We realized that this technology could actually help us find the one missing link in this case, which was Bass's '79 Pontiac, which hadn't been seen since the day Sanchez went missing.
We teamed together with Ames NASA Research Center in Moffett Field, California. This group in NASA is interested in developing a variety of different robotics tools. Some of them drive on the ground, others fly.
The team had the perfect tool for the job. A Sensetta Max rover.
We put our sensors on the NASA rover, and the NASA rover started marching across this field, logging their GPS location and logging the sensors' information.
It takes just 2 hours for the rover to generate a detailed survey of the area. Using the survey as a guide, the police officers start to excavate the site.
Within hours, we started digging up car parts.
If it is Bass's car, it should contain incriminating forensic evidence, such as bullet holes and blood spatter. Identification numbers and traces of paint on the car parts are an exact match for Bass's 1979 Pontiac.
With this new evidence, police are able to arrest Bernardo Bass.
The police confront Bass with the car parts, facing potential forensic proof of his crime. Bass accepts a deal from the district attorney.
With the car parts found, we finally got a guilty plea from Bass for manslaughter.
18 years after the murder of Don Sanchez, the case is closed.
This case would have never been solved without the help of NASA's incredible technology. The rover is now our new best friend.
The sacrifices of early pioneers made space travel safer for all who follow in their footsteps. As new evidence comes to light, investigators are still uncovering dark chapters in the history of space exploration. Today, NASA faces new threats unimaginable to the first men in space. We can only imagine what the future holds.